What's up, Internet? Welcome back to the PixelPlay podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Kaylan, aka Catastrophe, joined as always by one of my co-hosts, Adam, CS Radical, and replacing Chris because Chris is out because he clearly knows nothing about video games. We got Mark, aka MoonMoon, joining us this week to talk about video game sound design.
Friend of the Discord too.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm Chris, and also Mark, and I also still know nothing about video games, so we're gonna have to see how that goes on that side.
It's okay. He had like a 2-year run. He had a 2-year run before we kicked him out, so you guys.
We'll make it work. We'll make it work.
Yeah, so we're gonna talk today about like game design, sound design, kind of a whole little bit of deep dive into the industry and everything like that. But before we get to that, if you like this, you want more podcasts, we do a podcast every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can find it at YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, or by searching link tr.ee/PixelPlay podcast. We also have the side quest every Friday, and we also do Adam does a little Saturday morning gaming session live on YouTube. You can find him there. Adam, am I hitting everything? It's been a while since I've done this.
I mean, I can tell it's been a while because it's no longer noon that we release them. It's 4 p.m.
Yeah.
There you go. Out of practice.
It's noon somewhere in the world. It's noon somewhere in the world.
I mean, given the time zones, maybe not. That's like water.
Pirates could be watching this. You don't know that.
I had a great moment at work earlier where we were talking on a Discord, and one of them was like, "It's Friday somewhere," and we all just had to pause for a second.
And we're like, in another dimension, maybe. But
I was about to go into the multiverse on that one just to make it work. It was great.
Friday's not a time; it's a state of mind.
You know what? That's also a fair point.
Yeah, as I always say, any day could be a half day if you just leave.
Yeah, it's super awesome to be here. I do want to give a shout out to Kaylan and Adam for having me, and unfortunately, I'm thinking of Chris in spirit that he's not here. But yeah, Kaylan and I were
That's okay, I'm not.
Just like I'm not even here at all. Yeah, Kaylan and I were on a train. We had a chance encounter. I don't even know what they call those, but we had a great talk.
I think the term is meet cute.
It was a meet cute, yeah. And our partners are jealous now, is basically where we're at. And we were coming back from an expo and didn't know each other at all. And I don't even remember how the conversation started, but within about 5 minutes, I think we were just like so engrossed in the conversation that all of a sudden our stops were there, and then we just never saw each other again.
It's a big risk talking to a stranger on a train. You never know how that goes.
I was a little concerned for a little bit. You know, he's manageable, but it's all good.
I mean, it's not the first nickel that Kaylan has earned from just like randomly making a connection for a podcast through just randomly talking to somebody. That's literally how we started. So
yeah, that's actually we. I don't know if we've ever talked about it, but yeah, Adam and I just.
I think we have at some point.
Probably
a long time ago, maybe.
There's like 200 some odd episodes they did with Reddit, but yeah, we just
235 to be exact.
There you go.
That's impressive.
But yeah, just randomly one day posted on Reddit, said, "Hey, who wants to start a podcast?" And Adam signed up. So.
I really
assuming that it was probably going to be some like 16-year-old Australian kid, and like, well, this isn't going to work out.
Yeah.
When Kaylan told me about it too, I thought about it a little bit, and because I'm in the industry and stuff, I'm always so curious about people's thoughts in all sorts of different genres, and I think you guys have a really good variety there. But I started listening, and I was like, oh, this is not that I was expecting that it wasn't going to be good. But I started listening, and I was like, oh, this is fantastic. And even last week, I think I was coming back with my family from New Brunswick, and it's a 12-hour drive, and so I was listening to you guys for like an episode in the car, and I can't remember who it was, but someone mentioned like their time on a certain game, and my mom from the back, because I was with my family, my mom from the back was like, how do these people have so much time to spend on the games? And I didn't have the heart to tell her how much. I didn't have the heart to tell her like how much, how guilty I was of that as well. And I just kept my mouth shut and just kept on driving.
These guys, I tell you, man, they're weird.
So
I like the fact to think that you exposed your whole family to this podcast for a 12-hour drive.
Well, it was about an hour or so, but there's only so much you can do with 11 other hours.
I apologize to MoonMoon's family in advance.
Yeah, we're not talking.
I shouldn't
anymore,
say in advance.
so.
It's already happened. Never mind. I retroactively.
You're never passing the auxiliary anymore.
I've lost my aux privileges.
Yeah. Cool.
There's at some point, Kaylan, like maybe I'm like I know down every game I complete now when I put a score down. We need to at the end of the year just see like, okay, how many games have I finished and how many have you finished, and just kind of see like the sheer actual difference in the amount of time that we have.
Yeah, I don't know. Like,
I mean, it's not gonna like I'm not noting down like hours, so like a lot of the games I might play might be shorter, so I might have an advantage in that too, because you're usually the one that's playing a little bit, usually the longer stuff now, because it's like you're like, well, I'm gonna play one game this month.
Yep, that's my game.
That's Kaylan and I, actually. I was excited to talk with you, Adam, because our play styles are so different in terms of how we play games.
I'm assuming I'm different than most.
No, I think my old roommate was more like you, where he had just like hundreds of games. Bad taste, yeah. I didn't want to say it. But hundreds of games in his Steam library, and he would just like play one day and a different one a different day. And I have games I play based on mood, but the games that I do pick, I play for an incredibly long time, and I think that's because I was a RuneScape player growing up and I stuck with it, and that's how it goes, you know. So.
It's been a shift for me because I've like for the longest time Destiny 2 is my game. Like I put over 3,000 hours in that thing. So that's like awesome. It has happened before. It's just now I think, and like this is obviously gonna be a broad conversation later, but like the AAA industry itself is kind of not giving me the same vibes that it used to anymore. So now I'm going to smaller indie experiences. And, like, I'm trying stuff that I never would have normally tried before because I've hit a couple of times on some things that I never would have thought I would have liked. And now, like, it's like, okay, you know what? A game that's literally just about you owning a coffee shop and it's like this weird visual novel thing like a coffee talk is. I'm like, sure, I'll give this a try now because, like, apparently it works.
Well, like, the way I play is I play games kind of like novels where it's like once I start it, I'm playing it right to the end, and then I'm closing it, and I don't come back. Like, for me, it's very rare to replay a game. I think the only one I've ever replayed is, like, Last of Us is the only one that I consistently go back to. But other than that, like, once I'm done a game, I very rarely play the DLC. Like, it's like, hey, I've played it, I'm done, move on to the next one.
That's actually exactly why I'm on a bit of a cyberpunk kick again, because we had Crimson Desert come out, and I got the game, and I can only do one open world long form RPG at a time.
Yep.
And I started playing it and I was like, I feel guilty doing this because I haven't gone back and finished the other ones. So I'd already finished the main story of Cyberpunk, but you know how these games go. There's so much to do. It's insane.
And you're doing the DLC right now?
Not even. It's like literally like I have a really big issue. I'm such a completionist player where if I see active quests, perfect. Where I see active quests happening in my quest log, I'm like, I need to clear this. And that's like all I focus on.
That's the correct way to play these games. It's like main missions.
That NPC's counting on me. They've lost their dog.
You are not playing an open world RPG or a Japanese RPG correctly if you're going into a story mission and struggling.
Or just even knowing what's going on, because you did one mission and then you went to the other one and I was like, I have no idea what happened on this part to lead up to this.
It's like I remember the old Morrowind and just being like, you would go and do so much stuff on the side that when you realize, okay, now I got to go back and do like what the main quest was, and you're going through your journal being like, what was that again also?
What was that? I don't remember anyone's names. I don't know who this person is, like, at all, but I'm doing something for him, so.
Yeah. Yeah, no. So you're playing Cyberpunk right now?
Cyberpunk, I feel like I've been very spoiled, and this is where I get to say, so what have you guys been playing lately? I've been very spoiled with the amount of content updates that a lot of the games that I play has happened right now, so there's actually quite a few. I think I talked about RuneScape, but I really like their survival based game called RuneScape Dragon Wilds. So it's single player, like up to a few co-op people, but they've been kind of like releasing regions bit by bit, and they're upgrading all the tiers like you would in RuneScape with each new region. So it's really cool how they're doing it. So I'm actually just currently playing through that current region. We have Cyberpunk. There's like an event ongoing for Phasmophobia, and they have some cool upcoming stuff, which I'm excited for.
I got some friends that every day try to get me into it. I'm like, no, I am a big scaredy cat. You cannot make me.
I'll have to tell you on the side about how I got into that game, but I was like terrified. And the first time I ever played it was in VR based on a dare from my Twitch channel guys. It was incredible, and I hated it the first few times. Hated it the second time. Loved it the third time because at that time it just clicked, and I kind of knew what to expect at that point. But it really got me.
The best you get out of me is I play Lethal Company, and I'm the guy on the vehicle helping everybody through the map. That is my thing. That is the most you're getting from me.
It's incredible, and I think a lot of that, and we can get into this later because I have some comments on that, is where the sound design of Phasmophobia is not. I wouldn't say it's like not AAA or not super refined in any sense, but what they do as a minimalist concept is so good and so effective for what it is. And so, that's super cool.
Cool.
That's certainly what I've heard as well.
And the other one I've been playing a lot of that I never even intended on getting till I played the demo was Arc Raiders. So
Cool.
big Arc Raiders guy at the moment. It's really,
Nice.
really fun.
Nice. So you follow Arc Raiders over the Marathon camp then?
Yeah, I tried both. I thought Marathon was interesting. Did you guys try it? Am I doing? I know you're.
I haven't
not a
gotten around to
multiplayer
it
guy.
yet, but as again, like I just said, I'm a Destiny 2 former guy, so like I'm not opposed to it now that the reviews have been coming in a lot better. Because my worry too is that it was just going to fall by the wayside real quick because I didn't like the vibe going into it, and now it seems like people that are into it are pretty deep into it, and it seems like they did pretty good. I mean, Bungie multiplayer mechanics are always going to be pretty solid, so at some point I probably will try it. It's just it's not on my list for anytime soon, kind of deal.
I'll preface this by saying too, like, a lot of this just comes down to personal preference. So I'm not going to say by any stretch of the word that it's bad. I think there are certain you can see like me filtering myself.
I was going to say he's got Chris locked down. I'm not going to say it's bad.
I'm not going to say it's bad. I'm not going to say it's good. No.
Yeah.
Chris,
That was a
you're in
Chris
trouble,
voice. I'm
buddy.
sorry, Chris.
Chris
so sorry.
who? Chris who?
I miss him already. And, I do find that Marathon is a very, and this is kind of a good thing as well. Well, I am Chris. There's a very specific aesthetic to it that they were going for, both in the design and the music choices that they made, and a lot of the aesthetic as well too, where it's definitely a departure from other things, which I think can be a really good thing because a lot of games, I think you guys would probably say are lacking uniqueness in some ways these days. So I do like that they took a departure from it. Is it a departure into, for me, weird? Probably a few percentage points. Like the loading screen of the bugs eating each other and things like that. I'm like, I don't have a problem with this, but I also think it kind of like I think it's cool aesthetic-wise, but I just find it like maybe not as appealing as other things. It's hard to describe. The music's very like ambient and things too, and I think it's cool, but also like a much departure from much of a departure from other things, I would say.
Destiny's one of those studios where like the games always look so cool and they seem right up my alley, and then they're like live service multiplayer games, and I'm like, no, I can't do that. Like,
I think that's the other part that makes it hard for me now is like now that my gaming habits have changed. Now I'm not I can play a live service game. Now I'm like, dude, I've got like 20 things I want to try. Like I don't have time to spend for like 500 hours on something.
I have an interesting question for you guys on that topic, actually.
Yeah, go
so
for it.
I know you guys are generally not live service people. I know you've played Helldivers together.
Yes.
Right? Helldivers 2?
Yep.
Really, I got into that one late, really enjoyed it. What do you think it is about Helldivers that makes it less controversial as a live service game versus other things that makes it enjoyable?
I think for me, like, it's very rare for me to get into a live service game just because, like, being a dad, like, my gaming is not consistent. And the thing I found for me that clicked with Helldivers is, one, it wasn't competitive in that, like, I wasn't penalized if I missed out, right? Like, I'm not competing with the other players that, like, sure, if I miss out on a week, I'm not then being at the mercy of other players who've been playing for longer. It benefits me playing with people who've been playing longer. I'm not penalized for not playing longer.
Yeah, that's a good take.
So I think like the working together and like that aspect was really good, but also in just the nonsensicalness of it. Like there is no penalty for not playing. Like it's a community aspect, so that the only thing you're missing out on is weapons and gear and stuff. But I think if I recall, most, if not all of that was cosmetic. So
well, and the thing that I was going to add on that is that they keep them going. It's not like, a season pass thing where as soon as it's that time period is gone, it's gone. Like these things are still there. Like the Halo thing is still available. So like, whenever you either want to slowly grind the super credits to buy it or just straight up buy it, it's always there. Like there's no FOMO for it.
That's such a good point too. I actually love that you brought that up, Adam, because I was going to bring it up too as the same point. And one thing I'm really happy. So did I mention my studio when we started? I don't think so.
I don't think you've even introduced who you are. So do you want to take a second and tell us
you
about
know,
you?
Let's loop back to that one.
I mean, I thought we were talking about games, which are more important than people. But you know what? Fine.
Games as a people. Let's see. So like I said, thank you guys again for having me on. My name is Mark. My developer name is MoonMoon. Not to be confused with the big Twitch streamer. I'm a fake copy. And I am a sound designer in the industry. I work for a studio called Torn Banner, who's known for Chivalry 2, primarily some games before that, like Chivalry Medieval Warfare. And that was before I was at the studio. And then currently we're working on a zombie game called No More Room in Hell 2. So that's been very much in progress over the last few years. And the thing I was going to relate back to that point, Adam, too, was one thing I was really happy that we did in Shift 2 was that same kind of concept with a lack of FOMO when it comes to the battle passes. So you had in Helldivers, I love that you can continue on and basically pick one up whenever you want. And then Shift 2 is kind of very much the same thing. Different format for how it works, but I really, in general, I really love when games do that kind of thing, to bring people on and welcome them and say, hey, what do you want? Here's the thing for it.
Yeah, because like I mean, the greatest example has always been like you know your sports games like your FIFAs and your Maddens and stuff. Where like sure they have stuff, but the only way to get them is to either pray to the RNG gods that you get it in packs, or you go through a marketplace, which by the way is supply and demand. So if this card is no longer being accessible through whatever single player or offline thing that they have, well, it's on the marketplace, and oh look, the price has gone way up now because they aren't issuing out the card anymore. Oh no. So the fact that Helldivers 2 is just like it's 1,000 super credits or it's 500 super credits or whatever it is, it's that now. 6 months later, it's still that exact same thing. So
it's also nice that you can earn it in game too.
You can go in whenever you get to it, and yeah, like you said, you can just. I mean, I spent days just sometimes where I had nothing else going on, nothing in my backlog. I just throw in a podcast and I would just grind level 1 missions to just get soups.
That is so awesome. Yeah.
So yeah. But apart from that, like it's just the chaoticness of it too, right? And you don't have to play it like there's no. I mean, there are weapon tiers for Helldivers, but like you don't have to follow them because if you put the difficulty down enough, you can still be fine.
Yeah.
So it's the thing is like you play at the level that you want to. It's not like if you're doing a raid in Destiny, you kind of want to go in with gear that's not D tier. You kind of want to go with something that's at least like B plus.
Yeah.
So with Helldivers, like if you really just like using flamethrowers and like just a basic bitch assault rifle, go for it. It's your funeral that you're going to get killed like 15 times, and that's part of the fun of it too. It's how many colossally like grotesque ways can you die.
I feel called out right now.
I remember watching a guy on Twitch or whatever, and I think it was just like the highlights, but like I forget what he called it. He called himself like 9-Iron or something like that, and he was just going in with revolvers and just like playing like cowboy music and shooting up aliens, and it was just awesome.
Yeah,
that like you can do it.
It's one of those where you can have fun no matter what. If you're trying to take it serious and go to the highest difficulty, you can do that and be very conscious of what you're using. Or you can be like me, which is you go, I'm not going any higher than 5, and I'm just pulling out whatever I feel like in this moment, and we're going to town.
I think that it also benefits that like the narrative is so minimal, but also there because like you don't
you
feel
fill
like
in your gaps anyway. Like people have made their own lore.
I found a group of people and we would role play and we did like the full cheesy Ubisoft E3 like doing like calling strikes and military talk and stuff, and like we had like one guy who was like our captain and we were all like, sir, yes sir, and he's like, go take that ridge. We're like, yeah. So we're just like role playing like the true over the top Starship Troopers dialogue. Like we were doing that and just mimicking the vibe of the game. And I think that's the balance, is that like it's more of an arcade where like you put in a couple quarters, you play the level, you die, you blow up, whatever, you win or you lose, and it doesn't like you just repeat, right? There's no narrative that like I think of.
There
like,
are very few games that I have played where I can die a lot and I'm not upset.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. I love.
It's like it was like Fall Guys for me, and then Fall Guys decided to not do the thing that was doing well for it, and then now I'm not playing Fall Guys no more.
Yeah.
That was such an important thing. Again, not sound design related, but I've been with Shift 2 almost since the beginning, and it was one of the big important things that we really wanted in the game. Where it's like, you have this over the top gore fest that's happening, and you're sieging castles, and there's a very serious narrative around it, like in a way, but there's so much appeal where there's such a direction that came where they basically said like, people are going to die a lot in this game. make it as fun to die like as we can without like going too overboard. But I would say we went pretty overboard.
There's,
but in the
there's
best
some
way.
seriousness to it, but it is still a game about endlessly swinging a sword. So.
Exactly. Yeah, and there's things like you can die by getting jabbed by a chicken on fire, and like there's just endless ways to do ridiculous things, and you can launch yourself in a catapult. Like there's so much charm, and I really appreciate that Helldivers has so much heart and charm into it, and I think people resonate with that a lot.
Everyone's first self nuke is a rite of passage.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
Every time you come across just a random hell bomb in the scape, either that person has to come across it themselves, or you have to wait until they're close enough to it and just go, and boom.
Dude, remember when we used to play?
And now you know. I
used to kill you so much with the strategy. You hated it so much.
I think that's because like you just kept using. I think it was like the airstrike where it's always on a specific direction. So I started learning. I'm like, okay, he's thrown it. I need to go that way now.
And especially when you start the game too, it's like you have your experienced veteran friends. I definitely had this, and I was maybe a level 3 or 4, and they're like coming in with all these vehicles and stuff, and I've unlocked my first stratagem, and I'm like, I'm gonna throw it over here, and then 3 of them immediately die, and you're just like, oh, that's what that does now. Okay,
and they know that's par for the course.
Yeah, well, it's incredible.
Well, it's funny because it carries over from the first game, because I remember playing Helldivers 1 with my friends and my wife. And it was great because it was like a multi-screen co-op game, so you could all play there. And I remember playing with Jen, who is not a gamer by any stretch, and she just loved having the giant mech suit. And we put her in there because like she was kind of like hardest to kill, but like easy in like if she wasn't in it. But like we'd be like, "Hey, look over there!" And she would just like turn as she's shooting the gun and mow us all down. And it was just, we'd have to, all right, here's how you call us all back. Like great.
It's great too when you can get non-gamers and my girlfriends. Definitely falls under this umbrella.
Yeah,
coming in and joining you in the experience, and some like because it's a social experience, you're still having a good time out of it, and I think that's incredible when games can do that.
Yeah.
If there's a game that can appeal to anybody at any point, like that's when you've made something that works.
Yeah.
So speaking of games that don't appeal to people, what have you been playing, Adam?
Oh, that's a great Why am I even here hosting? Somebody already knows how to do this shit better than I do.
Damn, we brought him in. He's dunking on us.
Chris is already being replaced. My segue competence is being put into question here.
Oh my god.
Hey, listen, I've been watching a lot of PixelPlay. You can give credit to yourself for for the inspiration.
So I've been training you for the job. That doesn't help me at all. So quick update on Screamer. I'm dropping it for now just because these story missions are slowly getting patched to be fairer, I guess is the best way to look at it. Because the problem with Screamer, and I love the game, like at this point it's a 9 out of 10 for me. Like I fucking adore this game. The issue that I come across with Screamer is that in its story mode, they always will have like side missions you have to complete in order to do it. Like on screen right now, for anybody watching the video version, it just says win the race. That's not always the case with these. Sometimes it goes, you have to KO 3 opponents and also win the race. Here's the problem. If you're really good at the racing part, you can't KO people because you have to be behind them. So there's one race in particular that I'm stuck at. Now, it's been patched so that they reduced it from 3 KOs to 1, but I'm at the point where I'm like, you know what? Why don't I just put this down and wait until they fully finish messing with it so that I can just run through it and not get stuck again? But, like, the track is so small that by the first of 3 laps, by the time I'm on lap 2, I have just finally gotten the power-up to start KOing people. But in order to get that power-up, you have to be going at high speeds for long enough, which generally means you're probably in the top spot or close. So now having to quickly KO 3 people and still win that race is not a lot of time. So I gave it about 5 tries and got as good as 1 KO and went, nope, we can come back to this later. And then I see not too long after that, they started patching them because enough people, I think, were complaining, being like, guys.
It was you, Adam. You're leading the patch.
I shouldn't. If I'm too good at the racing part, I shouldn't be getting penalized for being good at the racing part.
They're just messaging Adam. They're like, Adam, we get it. Stop messaging us. We'll fix it for you.
That's interesting to have, like, with objectives in a racing game like that. So do you think, aside from getting first, obviously, like, what do you think, if you have anything in mind, like what would make a better objective than the kind of one that goes counterbalance to the other ones you have to complete?
Well, the only thing is I would say is, like, to me, I think it would just make more sense for it to be a win the race because the game's mechanics does have a sense of there's also a bit of those burnout, like old school themes where like you want to also knock people off the track and stuff. Yeah. So like there is an incentive to do it. It's like Mario Kart. If you're in the lead for most of it, you're only going to get bananas and coins. Like you're not going to ever get a blue shell because why would you? You're in first. So like even in games like Mario Kart where there's such an emphasis on items, you're going to play it differently based on how well you're doing in the race. So for a story mode, and you can't skip the missions too. Some games will be nice and be like, okay, you've tried this X amount of times. Do you want to skip this one and just go to the next cutscene? This game doesn't do that, or maybe it just doesn't. I haven't failed it enough times. I don't know, but with this game specifically, there's such an emphasis on speed too that like I don't feel the desire to want to now have to break or hold back in order to complete an objective. I think that takes away from what the game is, and I think they kind of recognize that too, that they're starting to reduce some of the things on it because I think they've understood now that it's like, okay, it's kind of taking away how other people would play this exact same race. Because it's basically forcing them to now play in a certain manner, which, I mean, look, I guess I could just not be perfect on every corner for the first lap, but like, it's not as fun if I'm having to not like do like the best that I can on each thing. So there is that kind of like, there's that balance.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me too of, based on how you described it, it almost seems like a case of trying to do too much at once when it comes to those things. Like, the example that comes to mind for me is I was a huge like Halo guy growing up and stuff too. So you have Master Chief Collection that comes out, or just any Halo game, and you have a map that you're playing or mission you're playing that is like you have the players who want to do a different difficulty. You have the achievement to get a certain time under par, basically, for doing a mission, and you have the par score, basically, as 3 different options for how you can play a mission. You don't have all 3. So I think if they're going to do, based on just what you've said, if you're going to do a race, it should be either you do first or you... Yeah,
like there being like 2 sides of it. Like, hey, you do 3 knockouts and finish, like, let's say top 3, or you just win it outright.
Yeah, I think it's also like dictating how you play, right? And that's something that like bugged me with like Assassin's Creed, like Brotherhood and stuff like that, where it started getting to the point where Assassin's Creed had challenges with the assassination, and it's like, kill them by, airdropping on them, or kill them with a poison dart, and it felt like it diminished and took away from it because what it was doing, it was like removing that freedom of me creating the kills. Like I was being penalized for playing it my way and having my own assassin style, versus them just being, this is how we want you to do it. And so kind of took a little bit of agency out of how you're playing it, and that's kind of with this game. You could be like, hey, do you want to be fast and untouchable, or do you want to be that dirty car? Like I was watching, do you guys ever see the recent movie that came out, like F1?
I didn't see that.
I haven't seen it, no.
Okay, super good, totally recommend it. But like the idea was that like Brad Pitt's character's coming in and he's winning this game in unorthodox ways, right? Like he's playing the system and using the rules and using to his advantage, and like doing
is
things. Is
he moneyballing F1?
Kind of. But like the idea is like, hey, if you want to play dirty and like knock out the cars, like that's one play style, but don't like dictate how I am as a racer, right? Is that kind of like what you're getting at there? Sort
of, yeah. It's more just like, again, I wouldn't have had an issue if there was even just a skip option if you had failed it X amount of times. Like if after 3 tries, like you still haven't, and it says, hey, okay, do you want to just skip and go on to the next cutscene? I wouldn't have cared either way. But now that I can see that they are patching it so that they're reducing some of the things, I think they're even aware they're like, okay, we pushed too far in one direction. Because it's a case of, I know what they're trying to do. They were trying to teach people the mechanics as they brought them in. The problem is you can do that without it being a lot more taxing. Like if it was just what this mission is now, if I had gone back to it, it's now just 1 KO and win, which is nowhere near as difficult to pull off. So it's just a case of like, it's just finding that right spot for it. But otherwise, like, this game is still fantastic. If you're a fan of those 90s arcade racing games like your Daytona USAs and stuff, like this is up your alley and then some. Like, unless you're opposed to anime, in which case, like, my favorite complaint is when people being like, oh my god, like, I don't want to sit through this like long ass friggin' story mode. I'm like, there's an arcade and multiplayer mode, guys. You can just do those. You don't have to play the story mode.
It's too bad. I wish and this is, I'm going to get like all commenty for a second. I find that there's a trend these days for negative reviews for games, and feel free to disagree with me, by the way, where people will leave a negative review because the game's not made for them, and it's like, because I don't like this game.
Don't get me started.
Right? And so I think that's a really good example too, where it's, I'd love to go back to the time of like, I recognize that this game's not for me. If a game's bad because it's bad and there's like a lot of issues with it, by all means, I think that's fine. But I think recognizing like, this game wasn't made for me, and so instead of dedicating my life on Discord to complaining to the devs how much I hate it, I would really
I've said it best when I say it used to be, why don't you like this game? Now it's become, why don't you like this game in the exact way I like this game?
Yeah. And not to say that people are invalid for thinking that. I think a lot of energy would be better spent on acknowledging that you don't like something and moving on to the thing that you like. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think it's a combination of, one, the hype cycle of video games is so much bigger now that people get hyped for a game and they want to play it, and it comes out and it's not for them. But I think it's also an aspect that we have far fewer games, right? Like, and the difference is like the conversation has gone beyond, for lack of a better term, the playground, right? Like, we're now talking as a whole community globally, right? And if you're not into this game, right? Like, if you're not into Arc Raiders, if you're not into Marathon, like, that's what's dominating the conversation right now, and you feel left out. But I think it's also like we just have fewer games, right? So if you're the big game out isn't your game, you feel left out, right? But I don't disagree with you. I'm just kind of like, I think that's why it happens that way.
It's an expansion on the thought. It's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, but the actual other thing I've been playing, and I finished this one. It was a very quick one, and I've been so happy that I came across this, because the Jin and Chris Classic Award has really needed some competition, and I now have my potential nominee. It's my first 10 out of 10 for the pre 2026 setup, and that's Neon Inferno, which is a homage to like your old Contra style games, and is quite honestly like one of the most beautiful like old school graphic games that I think I've come across in a while. So the big thing that this game does that a lot of more side-scrolling like shooter games don't do is that there is also background shooting. So at some point on the video version of this, for those watching will probably come across it, you shoot obviously like you normally would in Contra. You got all directions there, but you also, I believe it's R1, and you shoot into the background as well. So you actually have enemies that are outside of the scope of things that you can shoot as well. There are also the green bullets on screen you can deflect with your blade, and they can actually counter it. You could even hold that deflect button down and change the direction of where they go. So there's a lot of applicability to what you're doing. So if you're doing a lot of dodging, that's something you can do. If you're doing a lot of like parrying, like that's something that you can do very well with. So it actually has something that suits with different play styles. But like the idea of them using the background, and like again on screen right now, like there are also like police cars in there. If you crouch, you can cover, so you actually have a shot to take at least one attack before you start taking damage. So all these little things that they've put together, it's really smart how they've done this. And I'm like, man, like I don't think I can play other games like this without using mechanics like that now, because it makes things so much better. Like there's a level in particular where you're at a club where there's this big staircase, and you have guys that you're shooting on staircases in the distance, but also a staircase there. Also, when you shoot guys on the staircase, they roll to the bottom of those steps after they die. So there's actually like also that too. It's these little notable things that they did that make the game feel so much more polished, instead of it just being like, okay, here's just Contra as you know it, but here's like, hey, what if we did Contra, but also did like 8 really cool things too with it?
I'm like surprised it's taken until 2026 for us to be like, hey, why don't we shoot things in the background and use like this seems like just like in hindsight such a no-brainer like decision to make.
Yeah.
And like
and like the game continues to bring in more things like that, you know, keeps like adding like in terms of, you know, how differently I use certain moves. Like obviously now we're in a motorcycle level, but they use elevator levels very interestingly, like how certain platforms will go away, or how you have to watch out for certain guys that are going to have a grenade right at the point where they come in, so you can't always be on that side. So it actually keeps you from like ever getting like too stationary. So there's no shot whatsoever that you're going to be sitting still. There's always something going on.
It makes me feel so lucky that we're in a stage right now, or even in a year or age, where you can have these games that are, by all means, like more retro styled, but it takes on the lessons that we've learned from modern games, and it knows what it's doing, and you have that level of polish that even uses like some modern techniques. Like I really love the VHS style right here, and the aesthetic and the small attention to things falling down the stairs. Like that's awesome, and you wouldn't see that often in older style.
Well, because that's the biggest thing too. And we've had this conversation on the show so many times now, where it's like it's so exhausting to have these multi-$100 million games that there's so much of a focus on just it looking good. Where it's like, but if you have a way less budget and your focus is not nearly on like graphics being so over the top, which I say is this game is gorgeous pixel art, but like they also took the time to go, okay, since we're not spending every waking moment on making sure that this one piece of grass looks really good, what else can we do to make this like feel different than everything else that ever has been out there? And they're like, okay, background stuff. Okay, let's do that. What if we also like were like a little bit more detailed and like, okay, if you kill this guy in this spot, like something specifically happens. There is a point in the video, I don't know if you caught it. Someone shot that big like ball of energy. It killed another enemy on the screen because they happen to be in that area. So like it's things like that you normally don't catch. So there's friendly fire too that just you don't realize is a thing because you're not used to expecting it. It's always like they're invulnerable to everything except your own bullets.
Well, I think it's also one of the cool things is that we're getting to a point where people are now making the games that they grew up. Like they're taking the games that they love and that they had from their childhood, and now they're getting a chance to remake it themselves. And it's curious to me what's going to happen in 20, 30 years when the next round of developers comes through and they're making their love letter homage games that they have to when they were kids.
So in 15 years, Kaylan will finally get to play the Splinter Cell game he's always wanted.
It's coming. It has to happen one day.
It's
but yeah, like straight up, this is honestly one of the most beautiful pixel art games I've ever played, and that goes up with games like Sea of Stars and other games that have done that tremendously well. Like the vibe that this game does is perfect. It's so good because it's got that cyberpunk-esque, because I think it's like in 2055 or something around there that this takes place in. So like it nails that vibe down in every facet. And like you said, MoonMoon, with like the VHS sort of filter that it does with it too, that it really nails like that sort of, you know, faux futuristic vibe, like that good mix of like retro wave.
Yeah. I think a lot of games are actually going back to that retro wave style. Like even if you look at Arc Raiders that we mentioned before too, it's got a lot of that similar aesthetic going into it in such a way. And I think people are at this age, like this is just a random thought that I had just now, but I feel like a lot of people are feeling nostalgic a lot more lately for the easier times, and I think it's cool to see games reflecting that in a way, and having these polished versions of that.
But yeah, if you guys, if there's anybody listening to this and you're a Contra lover or those style of games, if you haven't played Neon Inferno, it's a must, like an absolute must. Like I've played this on the easy difficulty just to get a handle of it. I started playing on the next difficulty up at normal, and it starts ratcheting up. Like the first big boss that we saw that had a guy that you were shooting while he was on a vehicle, and there were like, I think it was like 5 turrets. There's only 3 on the easy mode, so they actually change how the bosses interact depending on the level of difficulty you've done as well. So like they do some really neat ideas with this, and I think it's one that like now this is a studio that I have to keep an eye on anything they release to, not just because of how good the pixel art is, but that's a good start, but to like see what they do with something else now, because like whoever the team is with I think it's Zenobia is the name of them. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'll probably figure that out afterwards. But like, it's these guys really understand like what a love letter is supposed to look like. They nailed it.
Yeah, honestly, it looks super cool.
Well, that just leaves the dad. What you got?
I could talk about video games all I want, but I'm playing Mass Effect 3. I'm not going to take any. I'm going to save what my thoughts are on that game. I will say though, I think this might be my favorite Mass Effect of the 3.
Nice.
Controversial
I
opinion.
can't wait for full takes.
I know. That's why I'm not getting into it. I like the gameplay. I like the story. I like that the characters are more narratively woven into the main story as opposed to just, hey, let's go over here. Let's go over here. Let's forget about this problem. Let's just go like find all our friends. I like that this one is more interwoven. It's interesting that like it's a great sense of like, oh hey, look, it's this person's now here. Like it just so happens that the one Solarian I know is at this one place that I have to go. So it's just kind of silly that way, but I'm like,
oh man, you would hate the Trail series then. Thank God you're not in Japanese RPGs.
Yeah. I'm really liking it. I know that they're like, I've got this like sort of Damocles just hanging over me that I know the ending wasn't popular, so I'm saving my final opinions on this game. But
I can't wait for them to come and be like, I don't know what everybody's complaining about. I thought it actually made sense canonically to have this ending.
So, well, for now, early days into Mass Effect. I'm loving it. I can't wait to play it. I like that the powers feel a lot better too.
That I will say, the combat is in its best form now.
Yeah, the combat, like, because
I would have loved to have played the multiplayer with you on this thing, because the
Yeah.
multiplayer was actually really fun.
Yeah, so I'm playing a Spectre, and I'm just like, I got a pistol, and I'm just like warping and shocking, and just, I'm like just a space wizard with a, I'm basically a Jedi with a pistol, and I love it. So
I didn't realize they had a multiplayer version.
Yeah, Mass Effect 3 came with a multiplayer. I don't know if it's on the Legendary Edition or not. Kaylan, is there an option for multiplayer
I
on
don't
it?
think so. I've not seen it.
Because I don't think they turned it on. Because the way the original game worked is that there was a multiplayer thing where actually you completing missions would add to your single player game's
War room
like galactic map.
Yeah.
So like when you were actually playing the multiplayer, you would want to max out every area because. Theoretically, I don't remember what it actually meant in the long term anymore, but it would have meant something towards the end of the game. But it was actually really good. Like, it was just another, like a similar, like kind of like what Gears Horde mode was sort of deal. But like, it's just with Mass Effect combat, and it actually fit very well for it. And I liked a lot. If they had ever done a standalone version of that, I would have been pretty interested in that.
Yeah.
It makes me really miss when games would do things like that. I think going back to the Halo example, in Halo Reach. I can't remember right now. But like things that you could do in the game to earn things for other parts of the game, and that would like interact and have an effect on it, and things like that too. There's always something.
Yeah.
So
I thought we were going to talk about just games randomly shoehorning in multiplayer and just working somehow. Like GoldenEye literally started that trend by accident.
Best game that has like a multiplayer standalone that had no business having one was Assassin's Creed. Going back to Assassin's Creed, but like
I've also heard good things about Uncharted's multiplayer, even though I never got into it.
I never got into it. I heard it was really good, but like I really liked the Assassin's Creed one because I think it was Assassin's Creed. I think it was Brotherhood who did it, and like you had to like play as an NPC. Like they had like 5 or 6 different NPCs, and you had to like basically act like one until you could go. Oh, I had so much fun playing with that, and like Jen would be like, we'd be sitting in my dorm room, and I'd be playing it, and she'd be sitting on my bed and just being like. That's one. She's like, she wasn't playing it, but she was just sitting there spotting NPCs, and she's like, I think it's that guy. I think it's that guy. So
that's so awesome.
I really like that. But what I really want to talk about is I took my kid to see the Mario movie. I went to go see Mario Galaxy 2.
Nice.
The Super Mario Galaxy movie. It was awesome. I liked it. I know it's like not getting as much love as the first one, but I have no complaints about it. I think it's just as good. I think it has a lot of homages too. Some really deep cuts too, and like how it uses some of the. I'm not going to go into spoilers, but like some of the ways that it incorporated like the retro game into the movie was super interesting. Like I was laughing seeing it. Like my son had no idea what was so funny about it, but I was just like, "Oh, this is great." Lots of characters, lots of throwbacks. It's not a spoiler because it was in a trailer and like posters, but like Fox is in there and like super cool. Like it just Nintendo's missing an opportunity of having like. Fox McCloud as a game right now. Like
I feel like they're just working towards a Smash Brothers movie at this point. Are they just Mario versing this? Is this going to be like just Avengers Part 2?
Well, I don't know necessarily, but like I mean, it's like everyone's like, oh, why is like Fox in here and everything? But like they put Donkey Kong in the first one. I don't think it's wrong to like.
Also, like if anybody's asking why is
universe.
Fox here, I'm like, why not, guys? Who cares?
I was kind of disappointed because like I was hoping that like. There's a scene where you're at like a spaceport, and I was just looking for Samus's spaceship somewhere, but I didn't see it. So. But there's a lot of moving stuff happening in this movie, so it's very possible that it was, and I just missed it.
I mean, also, I wouldn't be surprised if they're waiting to show that they're working on a Metroid movie. Now that we know Zelda's in production, it's like, okay, like, Metroid's got to be somewhere, because like if there's anything that would work well for a movie, it's Metroid.
Yeah.
I mean, I prefer that to be a series, a TV series. That would be way more interesting to me, but either way.
I really love when you have people who are such fans of the series that they're working on for gaming media, I would say, for TV and movies and things. And you can really tell when they've had you didn't get like a writer's issue where you have someone had like jurisdiction to kind of lead that in the faithful direction to things. I find
you can tell when Hollywood left alone on that one.
Yeah, exactly right. I find I know that like people hate the Witcher show, but I have such a big respect for Henry Cavill for being such an advocate for staying true as much as they could like to the series. It's really awesome.
Yeah.
And Fallout is actually
what do you mean? What do you mean? The Dead or Alive movie was perfectly representative of what Dead or Alive was. Actually, it wasn't that far off now that I think about it.
But yeah, no, I totally recommend it. My kid had a good time. I had a good time. I mean, it's not highbrow cinema. It's not going to leave you the audience. No. Like you're not going to leave the cinema thinking.
It's clearly designed for kids.
It's fun. It's fun. Like shut your brain off, enjoy some Nintendo references, and just have a good time. I totally recommend it.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. right up Chris's alley. Chris would definitely love it. So
I'm sure he's already watched it 17 times and hasn't told us yet. So
sure. That's where he is right now. He's not even gone anywhere. He's just sitting at the movie theater.
He might have loved it. He might have thought there could have been some improvements. I don't know.
You know, fair. He's got it locked down.
but also he really did like it.
Yeah, but also at the same time, really liked it. Yeah.
He sees both arguments. All right, Mark. Let's jump into it. Let's talk a little bit. Like, we've been having an awesome conversation here, but like I want to go deeper into like the conversation of like gaming, and like one of the things we hear a lot about like development and stuff, but we don't hear a lot about like sound design and where you're coming from. So I thought you'd bring a very interesting perspective, and so just kind of want to like talk about it, talk about your experience, what you think, like where the industry's going, all that kind of stuff. So like, why don't we just start? What's your role? What does a sound designer do? How do you get into this? All that.
Yeah, absolutely. So sound design has a number of different role titles with like slight variances depending on the size of the company. Ours is a smaller-ish company, I would say AA. So we have a lot of hats that we wear even just as a sound designer. So imagine we're doing things, and I wrote stuff down on the side, so don't mind me looking over the side here. So there's a lot of the actual design work that's what people expect. So when you hear a sound designer in the industry, they're like, oh, you make sounds. And that is kind of what it boils down to, but there's a ton of nuance to that as well, and we can go into that more. That's either working like doing recordings. If you're bigger budget, a lot of bigger budget people have more jurisdiction to do recordings. A lot of that stuff's made from sound libraries as well. If you're doing more of a sci-fi game, that could involve a lot more plugins and synthesizers and things like that you might go into as well. A lot of it can be related to vocal work. So either I've voiced a few peasants in Shift 2 actually, which is really fun. But usually the standard for that at studios is that you would have agencies that you would contact, and some people will do just smaller local things. We do a mix, and so you would have people doing like, honestly, like I don't have to do this. It's pretty dry, but you'd have people doing like contracts and then communicating with the agencies and sitting in recording sessions. A lot of sound editing for like thousands and thousands of vocal lines, the mass export and rework and all that fun stuff. I do a fair bit of that as part of my job, but it's not like one of my main things. Probably my least favorite part of the job, actually. But there's a ton of fun to be had in sound design, and I always rave about it. And one of my coworkers is always like, "Oh man, I wish I had your job for things." Yeah, so you have, I don't do music for the game, so we would have a composer come in and do that. Could I? Probably, but it wouldn't be very good. So my specialization is in the sound.
Look, I see a keyboard in the background. Clearly, you must have the chops, right?
I do it for fun. For sure. But I would leave it to the experts for that one, for sure. What I do is trailer work as well, too. So sometimes when trailers are coming out, I'll be doing sound to picture for that, which is very different from sound design for games.
Okay.
In a way, and I can, if you want to ask about that later, I can.
Let's just do it. Tell me about that. Like,
yeah. So one of the really big challenges in games versus media. Actually, I want to see if you guys have any initial like thoughts on like what might be different about it and what might be challenging for the two mediums.
Like between like a game versus like a trailer for you,
like a TV show. Like if you're going to do sound for a game versus a TV show.
That's a good one.
Well, the thing I would imagine is that it's way different to deal with like a sound like in terms of an atmosphere or in terms of like, you know, responsiveness when it's talking about something that's indicative of what the player's going to do, rather than you have a literal set idea of what it's going to sound like when it's in TV form, because you know what's coming.
Exactly.
Whereas it's the same thing with animation, right? Like you have to make sure that you have covered like anything that a player could do with this person as they're walking around, especially third person. Like, what is this clothing going to suddenly get bunched up if they just start just flinging around in a circle like most people like to do? So
exactly. Like,
so I assume sound's not far off of that. We're like, what if this person literally is just going to jump over and over again?
It's so similar. Like you would have almost an endless number of not even just player actions, but behaviors from any AI in the game versus environments that the player could be interacting with at the time. We use a dynamic music system. That'll be fun to talk about later, which reacts to things that are happening. But at the same time, in our games, we're running about probably about like 200 sounds at a time.
Wow.
And how do you make that even make sense without just being total chaos? Whereas, and I'm not saying that it's harder or anything than than TV because that comes with its own set of challenges. But if you're doing sound to picture, which is a linear story, movies, TV, trailers, etc., YouTube videos, you do have a preset visual, like picture lock, basically, that you would work off of. And then, so you can build it up in layers from that, which is how I would approach it. And it's the same every time. So you can do a lot of polish and refinement and tuning and EQing and then...
Because I was going to say, depending on the kind of game that it is, I imagine, because you have to take into things of factors like, okay, well, how, like the distance away from like certain sounds or what direction they're looking in. Because especially with games where you have like a 360 camera where like you've turned, especially if people have surround sound headphones too, like how are you balancing all that too?
Because like I can imagine the situation, like, is this kind of like what you're referring to, Mark? Like when Jen was playing Skyrim, she was not interested in the story at all, and so she'd go somewhere and there's like a dragon overhead and it's like ambient music, and all she wants to do is just collect and hoard all like the utensils in like in the area. Like, is that kind of what you're saying is like the issue?
Yeah,
like,
and that's the part I love the most, because I love being a sound designer. I would consider myself more of a sound engineer, because despite there being two of us, I do probably most of the systems work in the game to make sense of everything that's happening in the game. And so with 200 sounds, you have to be so diligent, and there's a lot of documentation involved where it's like, hey, these are basically all of our like individual pieces, and we're assembling them in such a way, and you like crank the levers and stuff to make it kind of work in a way that kind of makes sense. So you would use that through multiple tools. It would be attenuations, which is just how far a sound attenuates and how that sound changes the farther it gets away. You'd also have prioritization systems, which means that I'm playing 200 sounds. What sounds can you probably not hear at the moment, and what sounds are more important than other sounds? So, for example, we have, like in the zombie game that I'm working on, like you might have crickets off in the background, or you might have some background ambience happening with like the apocalypse happening in the background, and that's taking up maybe a 15th of like your total scope for what you can play. But you're in the middle of 100 zombies in a horde, right? And so how do you, even amongst the horde, like how do you define what is the most dangerous zombie in this horde right now? And a lot of that can be done with the prioritization of like choosing which sounds that you're hearing from which ones. So for example, we have a max, we can use like max limits on either like global sounds or individual sound types. So for example, footsteps, I have a max limit of about 20. You can hear probably about 20 footsteps at a time, no matter how many zombies there are. And that is distance-based. So the ones that are closest to you, it prioritizes those footsteps. And a good example of attenuation is attenuation, and this is actually sound mixing as well. When we're talking about that horde example, if you're in a horde of zombies, there are maybe two that are 5 meters, 10 meters away from you. There's ones farther 20 meters out. And some are aggroed on you, some are not aggroed on you. So the way I've kind of set it up is that the ones that haven't seen you and are still in their idle player states they'll do like they're like Romero style zombies, and they're kind of human still stuff. So they'll do like idle breakers, which is like crying or like things like that. So those sounds I've literally mixed to be lower at all times versus the next most important sound, which is probably investigations. So they perk up a little bit more. The sound's slightly louder at all distances. You have the pursuit sounds, which is like a step above that. You have the attack sounds, which is the highest one. But even amongst attack sounds, I love going on these rambles. Even amongst attack sounds, you have lunging, which can happen from 10 meters away. You have just their general swipe at you. They have their grabs, which is its own event and stuff too. So even amongst that, like if a zombie's swiping at you, their attack sound is a lot louder, and their attenuation, which is the dB level over distance, the decibel level, is very high when you're close. But if it's attacking another player 5 meters away, that range I drop off really quick, so that only the one that's closest to you is like very clear versus the other one who's doing the same attack and the same intensity, but at a distance that's not aggressive. And then between the two attack types, for example, you would have the attacking with the swipe and then the lunge attack. The lunge attack can be done from 7-ish meters away. So for that specific sound, I have an entirely different attenuation versus all the other attenuations for like the walking and the attacking, the regular attack. Because the lunge is a lot more dangerous, so you need to have that sound a lot louder from a lot farther away so that the players can react to it when that zombie attempts to lunge. Yeah. So very, very quick and dirty example of some of the considerations that we make. And there's
it's kind of almost in the sense of like,
yeah.
It's kind of almost in the sense of like when you're at a bar and you're listening to a conversation, of course the main thing you'll hear is what's in front of you with your friends.
Yeah.
But like if somebody says like fuck in the background, you kind of do perk up with that because, well, oh, that's a swear word. Like it's kind of the similar vibe of like there's certain things that you are going to gravitate towards depending on, you know, what seems the most imposing thing at the time.
Exactly. And there's such a very distinct goal of a sound designer where sound design is what we like to say is that the best sound design is one you don't notice. So
yeah, I was just gonna say like it's crazy you're talking about this and like how much you're communicating with your audience or with the player, and they don't even realize it.
Yeah.
No, we just all take it for granted. It's like really good atmospheric music in a game where it's like you don't really know, like, because we always remember the jingles of like your Marios and your Zeldas, but like we don't always remember the one music that plays in like this certain point in a desert map on this game where it's just like kind of there in the background because it's more just meant to be like it's to keep you in that zen sort of deal.
Yeah. Well, I think to it, like playing Mass Effect right now, or just any shooter where like how often you figure out that there's a guy to your side, not because you get hit, but you just hear that kind of like side shot, and like, Mark, tell me if I'm wrong, but there's probably no actual shot that's probably there to give me a cue that there's someone to my side that I'm not aware of, right?
It could have been. I think it depends on if it's like hit scan or actual projectiles, because when we design projectiles in Shiv 2, for example, we have a cone of sound actually that comes from the arrow, where if you are, oh god, how do we do this? So the arrow's going this way, okay? You have a cone of sounds that's happening that only it's like really, really quiet if you're outside of that angle, but if you're inside of that angle, whether it's coming from a catapult or an arrow, that's where the sound is like very, very prevalent. So if it's anywhere in that direction where it could hit you, you'll probably hear the sting, like as it's going by, until it goes by, which would be another sound. So a lot of considerations like that, like with Shiv 2, where it's like, how do you differentiate a catapult coming towards you that's going to be a danger versus not a danger, for example.
So, like, your line of work, like, when you're working with your team, is this something you're starting, like, at the very beginning of Inception, or do they have the game and then they just kind of plop it and say, hey, add some sound to it? Like, how much do you work with, like, the game devs and, like, gameplay, like, specialists and stuff when you're designing sound? Or is it, like, you're kind of reacting to what they've already built?
It's definitely both. I think there are definitely some systems in sound design that you start very, very early on. That would largely be the overall vision of the game, because the sound, like, the way that the game sounds, and that's been one of my favorite things working on the zombie game, is that sound is everything, like, in this horror game, right? And so you need to get in really early. People, to a certain extent, you need to know what the game is. At least you need to hear the high-level pitch of the game. And then you can kind of pitch your own... I'm not the audio director, but you can pitch your own direction for how things are going to be going. And I think a lot of that comes down to, like, the music style that you're going to be going for and things like that. So all of that stuff can be done beforehand, but at the same time, like, at our studio, it's very collaborative, right? And I think one thing that happens with sound design generally is it is kind of like a forgotten art, like, in a way. Yeah. Not forgotten, but just not even not respected, but just...
It's not the sexy part, right? It's not the sexy part of, like, the development. Like, not to say it's not, but, like, it's not the one that people think of, right?
It's definitely an afterthought, is what I would say. So
yeah, like, because what I was going to ask is, like, because a big thing that everybody talks about is, you know, when the Game Awards come around, like, there's certain awards that people are like, well, what does that even mean? So, like, and obviously one of them tends to end up being, like, best audio design, because we always consider audio to be voice acting, music. Generally, those are the two things. When we think of audio design, we're like, oh, well, maybe Battlefield, because, like, there's lots of shooting that goes on in the background. Like, they're not necessarily thinking big picture. So, like, from your side of the coin here, you know, if there is, like, one thing in particular that you think is, like, really underrated in how a lot of gamers, like, think about audio design in a game, what do you think that might be?
Underrated,
or even, like, just something that a lot of people, like, probably should consider more when they're listening to a game, like something to catch.
I have an example, because, like, because, like, one anecdote I've always heard was, like, they were talking about, like, Last of Us 2, right? And everyone's like, oh man, like, they look so real, and, like, the grass and everything, and, like, what the developers were like, holy crap, they figured out how to get rope physics. Like, no one talks about, like, being able to throw an extension cord and how that, like, the physics of that, but, like, everyone who does development was like, wow, like, is there something with you where you see sound design, you're like, holy shit, they were able to do this, and, like, we as gamers are like, okay, cool.
This actually ties in perfectly with, like, what the intention is. So I'm going to tie a few things together here. I'm hoping I'm hoping it fits. We'll see.
You're running this. You're why we're here. Go for it.
So yeah, talking about how sound designers approach early games and where they follow up on systems and things. So one of the big things that we would design first is the feel of the game, right? So I think there's two really big parts of sound design. I was thinking about this before we started talking. There's two really big things that come into sound design that add to the whole experience. One is the vibe. There's no better way to say this other than like the vibe. So you're making a game. People are like, this is what the game is. You're constructing the vibe, and I've done so much of that. Like my favorite thing to do is ambience in games, and so I've done a ton of that kind of like vibe setting. The other thing that people, and this kind of falls into what you're saying, is what should people take notice for is that a lot of sound design is meant to convey information. And there's such an intentionality for a lot of what sound design does, assuming that, sound designers aren't coming in at the very end being like, oh shit, I got to put some stuff together and then like get out the door. If the earlier you can get in and follow up behind the people making the systems, you can tailor make your own systems to contribute to that. For example, a subtle thing, and I'll talk about a game that I really like as well too, but I can talk a little about what I've done in No Mermaid Hell 2. Is there's a concept of getting infected in the game if you get bitten, or if you're like low enough health and then you get scratched or something like that. And then we were thinking about how we want to represent that, and so 30 seconds you'll get like some subtle stinger. We didn't want it to be super, super obvious immediately when you're infected, because it's kind of fun like leading up and being like, oh shit, like I gotta grab pills or something like that. What we had a lot of fun with, and one of my favorite things I've worked on actually in my years as a sound designer, is our concept of audio hallucinations. So we use we use something called RTPCs, which is a real-time parameter control, fancy name for a variable, basically, where it tracks, you have an infection percentage from 0 to 100. And as you get more infected, we start adding in different elements of the infection. So it might, we actually change the frequency. You can have, there's so many parts that I'm trying to connect now.
No, dude, this is great.
So one of the things we did was really fun that we put across a bunch of all maps. We came up with like 20 to 30 variations of hallucinations that you might hear just audio-wise. So we want to convey information to the player, not only that they're infected, but how infected they are. So we add certain looping sounds that would come in the further you are infected outside of hallucinations. But we also want to convey to the player, to other players as well, just through like the dynamic player experience, where you'll be walking into a house and you hear a baby crying upstairs all of a sudden. There's no baby there. But then you might comment to your friends in VoIP, like, why is there a baby crying? And they're like, oh shit, dude, you're infected. Like things like that. It's really fun that way. We actually changed the player's voice to sound more like a zombie the further infected they are. Like, so the last 20 to 30%, we apply an effect on their voice that gets more and more intense until they're like almost fully infected. We did so many things. What else did we do? Oh yeah, we have crazy whispers that'll happen around you even though there's nobody there. So it starts off very infrequent, but by the last, which might be like one every 90 seconds or so, but by the last like 30 seconds, their trigger rate goes to about 1 every 3 seconds, or like even quicker and stuff. So it's all information to convey like how much danger the player is in on their health state, but it's not in your face at the same time. So if you're listening out for it, good players will know, even without looking at the game, how infected they are based on those cues, as an example.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool.
Yeah, it
kind of gives me those vibes of like what, say, like from in completely different perspectives, but like what Eternal Darkness used to do with like kind of giving you weird things to kind of screw with you, but also at the same time what Hellblade kind of does with its audio design, where it's just there's so much around you to kind of give you a sense of like what might be going on, especially with the hallucination stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd love to play Hellblade, because I think a lot of the direction that we went, unbeknownst to us even, is I think I've heard is similar in Hellblade or something.
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
super
like
cool.
that schizophrenia kind of hearing voices aspect. Yeah, I feel like that's a game.
Wait, I thought he was replacing Chris. He should know about Hellblade. Like,
honestly, I feel like Hellblade like is a game that was designed or pitched or led at least by sound designers, and they're like, the rest of you come
honestly
along, we're
wouldn't
building this
surprise
game.
me.
Like, all right, we need you guys to make this. This is what we're doing, and they're like, all right, cool.
Yeah.
So like
exactly.
Are there games for you that like stand out for sound design that, you know, if you could go to the hilltop and scream out its accolades, like what are some games that you would say, and like why, are good examples of sound design?
Yeah, so I have
obviously aside from yours.
Of course, no, I was going to bring that one up. I'm like, I know mine's awesome. So I want you guys to think about what your examples might be. I'd be so curious to hear about that. But I will start with one of my favorite games is Hunt Showdown. I don't know if you guys know anything about it.
I've wanted to get into that. It was never in the cards for me.
So it holds the curse of the title extraction shooter, but I think it's done super, super well. We have basically 12 people load into a map. It's a player versus environment, which means that the zombies are undead or corrupted beings are trying to kill you. It's kind of like a late 1900s post-apocalyptic Western. So there's like this really cool sense of corruption. It's Western themed. I'm not really into Western games, but this game like wrapped me in. And you have it's a very slow pace until it's not type of game. So the goal is you go into this map. It's 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer. You need to find 3 clues to find where the boss is, which drops a bounty. So the gameplay loop's like quite simple. And then you kill the boss, you wait for the bounty to show up, which takes about 2 minutes, I would say. And then you have to take that bounty from the boss's lair to the extraction point, which is on the edge of the map. Wait 30 seconds, then you get out. What makes it so enticing, first as a game concept, then I'll talk about the sound design, is that you have a game that is a game where like one headshot will kill people. But other than that, the gunplay is quite slow compared to a modern day shooter. So the time to kill can be quite long. You're using really old style guns or like basic melee. And you also have the consumable items. And so what I find is so important in that game, you can't listen to music when you play this game because the sound design lends itself so well to the situational awareness. For example, if you are walking and they have kind of like dynamic animals that'll be around, so there's a horse that you walk by, it's half dead. You have a group of crows. If you walk too close, the crows will fly off. And you have that crow sound and the visual will be off at a certain distance. So players within 200 meters away from you might get an indicator that, oh, there's a player there. And because you can die fast, but also slow, and the people who tend to get the drop on other players tend to succeed in the fight. Not all the time, but you know how it is generally. You have to be so careful. Your goal is to not make too much noise throughout the thing because that's how people will know where you are. I really like one thing that I like that they do about that too is you have the gunplay, which is, like I said, 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer map. But if you shoot a gun in the map, people anywhere on the map can hear you. So the spatialization of your positioning and how hidden you are and how much noise you want to try not to make when you're fighting the boss and things like that is so essential. And the spatialization of where players are when you're walking through water is like farther than other things too. So the whole game is designed around sound to be as intense and efficient as possible when you're navigating the map. You want to take out monsters certain ways so you're not making noise. You want to avoid certain things. Do I walk through the water here versus there because the sound of the water on your feet is a lot more obvious than other things. The crouching and distancing between footsteps is incredible as well too. So having a game that, like you said, that was almost like made by sound designers in a way, makes it really, like, in my opinion, a pretty unforgettable experience. And I would say it's probably my favorite game of the last few years for that experience alone. As a very, very quick side tangent, one of my buddies gets really annoyed with me, jokingly annoyed, because when they introduced rain into the map, it's toned down now because people couldn't hear well enough, which was very intentional in how it was designed originally. But people didn't like that as much, which is fair. I think it was so cool because all of their rain environment was some of the best sounding like rain I've heard in a game.
I was gonna say because it sounds to me like it would really put a damper on, like, oh god, I really can't tell what's going on now, because there's just so much noise around you, which probably was the intent. So
yeah, it changes the dynamic, right? And I liked it a lot, but I respect that people didn't because they're like, I want to hear where people are at all times, and I'm like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, especially in a PvP game, it's like a game that people are like, well, I need to know the people that I need to shoot.
Exactly, right. So it did add an element of less player autonomy, and people dying probably from means that they couldn't predict, and I think that's probably where that came from. So yeah, it's definitely a fair thought to have, but yeah, that's why I love that game, and I would definitely recommend if people like sound in games, that would be a top contender for me to check out.
Nice. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I like it.
Yeah,
when
like the two that come to mind for me are like, and this one's gonna sound like way off of my base. This was again a game like similarly, like I think, when you were talking about how you got brought into Phasmo as a as a thing, I had to play one round of Alien Isolation until I died, and that's with headphones on, and I'm like,
I hear that's a good one. Yeah.
why does this game scare the shit out of me so bad? And then I stopped and thought of it. I'm like, oh yeah, because you don't hear much of anything. Because the little things that do get you, it's similar. Like I'm sure Silent Hill is probably a big one for a lot of horror fans too, because a lot of that is very ambience only is a large part of that stuff. But like with Alien Isolation, it's just that idea that you're alone right now, but you don't know for how long. Yeah. Which is the problem. The other one that comes to mind is Returnal, and again, a game like that. I mean, Saros is going to be coming out not too long from now as well from Housemarque, but it's a game that's designed for you need to be able to know like everything that's going on around you, because there's a lot of dodging, there's a lot of mechanics that you have to be able to do, and it's picture perfect. Like you have to be in that mindset of like, oh crap, I need to dodge this, or oh, I need to get this specific spot shot, because if I don't, like I'm gonna get hit. So the idea that they have to design everything, especially, and it's a game for headphones for sure, where how they did surround, so that at all times when you're about to get screwed. So it's similar to like what I'm assuming like Hunt Showdown does, and that like so much of it is designed so that you are pretty aware of what's going on in that spot 15 meters away, in that spot 7 meters away. Like you have a pretty good idea of if there's something that's dangerous to you, you're going to be very well aware of it.
Yeah, I get called out when I'm streaming as well too. I'll be playing Hunt Showdown, and then like I'll close my eyes honestly, like sometimes, and then I'll be like, okay, there's a guy about 30 degrees that way, and then people watching me be like, how do you know that? And so like I'll end up getting the kill, and they're just, I can't see them obviously, but just like their reactions are just like, and I think that's just a perfect example of sound done right.
It sounds like being a sound designer and playing Hunt Showdown is like a cheat.
It definitely, I would say it helps. Yeah, so I'm surprised I haven't been banned yet.
Yeah, for me, the ones that like some examples I can think of like really good sound design in gaming. Like one was like I think back to like Warhammer Space Marine, like those games. Like when you play, like you can hear where like the hordes are coming from. But one thing they do, and they're not unique in this, but like other games that they do it as well, is like where you're like shooting the gun, and you can hear how much ammo is left. By just like as you're playing, like, and it goes like, and it's kind of like you can play that game without having to see what your ammo capacity is, and just know when to reload when it does it. So I think that's one cool example. The other one that kind of always stood out for me was like Splinter Cell series, particularly like Chaos Theory. Chaos Theory, because that game is very much like dependent on like sound and how you make it, right? Like the ambient noise, like I think it's that one where like you're playing and you have to time it with like lightning strikes and stuff, so that like if you want to take a shot and there's like thunder, they hear it less, or if you like have a generator running, you can make more noise. Like it's just the level of how they incorporate sound into stealth was really interesting.
Yeah, I find any game that has a slower pace, I think I really like the zombie game that I work on, like No Mercy 2. I almost wish that there were more moments, and it's just not how the game's played, right? Like it comes down to how the game's made. There was an opportunity when we worked on our first map where we had like a really, really big first map called Power Plant, and in the central power plant, it's like the thing's melting down, and you have to kind of start at the outskirts, kind of like, and make your way towards the middle to save it, but you have to go to a POIs and do certain things. And our game is kind of known to have, you're more like you're not like a badass type of person, you're more of like a regular guy trying to survive the apocalypse, which I really like as a concept. And what ends up happening is that usually you have so many zombies around you that I think it's great for that vibe, but I also think it's nice, and I wish that there was a little bit more of a slower paced moment to moment horror, kind of like what you would find in like Phasmophobia, for example. So when we were working on one of the POIs called The Hospital in Power Plant, I did a bunch of funky things, because I basically used it as like an experimental ground to see like where we could push it and things like that, and a lot of testing happens around that, where I actually put a volume around the hospital where if you're inside it, zombies are like 20% quieter, for example. So you're walking around. I also cut out we have like an indoor-outdoor system. So if you define that you're like fully indoors versus half indoors or things like that, you can cut out a lot of the outdoor sound. So I maxed that out. So it's like outside is, your nighttime, you got your ambience going on, and then you go inside and it's like pin drop. And there's depends, and sometimes there's a lot of zombies, sometimes there's not. But I think we get some really nice moments where you're walking around, and if you take it slow, you can really take in that kind of vibe. And I added in some elements too, where it's like I literally went onto Audacity. I usually use other programs, but this was an easy one to do. I went on Audacity, recorded some breathing, and then I used an effect called pulse stretch, which stretches out like 12 times, so that when you're in there, you almost have like this really like subtle kind of like changing vibe that's almost intangible, but really kind of sets the tone. And that's what we were talking about. We were talking about like tone design and like things like that. And so it was really nice to have those moments to be able to do that. But I also think you need to design the game you're designing for, right? So it's sometimes you can have those quiet moments, but it's more about how do you mesh everything together, like in those cases.
Sure. When you talk about like slow zombie games, it brings back like ideas of like Dead Space, and Dead Space I feel captures that slow, quiet zombie apocalypse kind of thing. Like, did you ever play Dead Space?
I've seen gameplay.
Okay.
If I can't play games, I try to watch them instead, so I
Sure.
know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, and like that game was very cool and kind of creeped me out because there's a lot of moments where I'm just walking slowly because like I don't hear anything, and that's almost as scary as like hearing like a zombie or a monster.
Yeah, I love horror games, and I love horror as a genre, but I'm such a scaredy cat. Like, so I it's been an interesting angle to approach it, where it's like, okay, now I'm making one, and as a horror game is probably the most fun a sound designer can have working on a game.
Oh, I bet, yeah.
Outside of like sci-fi or something. So,
yeah. Like in terms of like is there any like other stories you want to share in terms of like fun anecdotes of like how you've made any sounds, like any creative solutions you ever had to come to for like making up like a weird sound or anything like that you want to share?
That's interesting. I think it's hard to think off the top of my head. I've probably touched about 40,000 sounds on this project, and like 30 or 40 on the other project. But I did have to record one of the zombies in the game, and I remember I could use the studio in the office. We have a sound booth there. Mm-hmm. But one thing that I ended up having to do actually was when I was doing my recording, I have a setup where I have a microphone in my closet. And so I'll go into my closet, I'll close the door, put a towel over, and our zombies, like I mentioned before, they're less of like that like type of thing. Like they have those moments, but it's more of like the almost like corrupted sick. Yeah. So they still have like humanity in them. And so you'll hear them like kind of choking or like crying and choking at the same time or things like that. Mm-hmm. And so I am glad I didn't get a wellness check from the police, because I think the sounds that were coming from that closet, honestly, were pretty disgusting. And I'm not even kidding. Like doing that recording, I was practically throwing up. Like even doing that stuff. And I think that's a sign of a good session, when you get that close into it.
You must
was
have
that
to,
from a case of like just certain actions you were making, or was that just like your vocal cords being like, stop?
It was a combination, honestly. Like we have a script where like you have all these different zombie behaviors, so you're probably getting like 70 to 100 different sounds, and you have to address all of the different actions. And so some are easier, some are harder, but just by the end of it, like the fatigue and just the contortion that your throat is going through the whole time, I was like, oh my god, yeah, it was really something for that. But you gotta love it, right? So
yeah. For sure. Yeah, like you probably have to have some like weird conversations with your girlfriend, be like, you're gonna hear weird noises, everything's fine.
Yeah, I swear. And it's not the first time either. Like when I was living with roommates in my old place, that was when I was recording a bunch of the peasant voices, I think. So
yeah.
In the complete opposite direction, you just hear like disgusting and then just weird like the sounds coming from it. So a lot of the vocal recording, that's always a fun story around those things. I've worked on a ton of sounds. It's hard to think of specifics off the bat, but the one thing I like about sound design is that because sound designers are if you're an animator, you're animating and things like that. And you're kind of if you're doing character art, you're doing character art. and things. Sound designers are doing sound, but we have the interesting challenge of and privilege of almost interacting with almost every single team over time too. So what I really like is that every day for me is super different, and then I'm always working on different things. I just stopped myself from saying what I was working on now, but yeah. So every day I come in and I'm like, okay, I'm going to review this thing that I worked on the other day. It sounds in. The audio programmers put this thing in, but then this afternoon I'm going to be doing something completely different. And then I've got a systems work for an upcoming system from this other team. So there's a lot of jumping back and forth and stuff, but that's how I like to keep busy personally. And so yeah, it all kind of blends together in that sense, for sure.
Cool. Kind of like just like final kind of wrapping up question, like Adam, unless you have anything else, but like, where do you, like, as someone who works in the industry, like Adam and I are just two like numbskulls who just talk online and play video games. Like, as someone whose like feet are actually in the water, like where do you see like the gaming industry like currently in its health? Like, you hear lots of people saying like, oh man, good time to be in the industry, bad time to be in the industry. Where do you see it as, and like where do you see it going in like the next 3 to 5 years?
So in my okay, personal opinion, first of all.
Yeah, of course.
Second,
totally.
Second opinion. I'm going to channel my inner Chris here and do a bit of a fed sit. I think that the industry is in both a good and a bad state right now, for sure. I think what the industry is going through is actually a reflection of what most of the world is going through right now, in a very big way, and some studios are affected by it more than others. Obviously, you guys hear about like certain issues that some studios have, whether they had a successful game or a not successful game, and you kind of get like the same result. So, in terms of player expectations and dev expectations and game scopes and things like that, what we're seeing right now is an expectation from the world and in the industry of exponential growth. And what that reflects is that every game that comes out, especially like sequels, have to be bigger and better and released with more content than the previous one, even though the previous one's been out for 10 years or so, right? I think that really puts a high strain on certain developers. And I'm not saying that people are wrong for expecting that. I think we really have issues too with game studios announcing games way too early before there's any chance of it coming out. I hesitate to say it because I'm a big Skyrim
What do you mean?
fan.
I assume Elder Scrolls 6 is coming out.
That was the example, right? That was the example. Where Todd's like, just forget I said it.
Also, Star Citizen.
Exactly.
What? No, I never mentioned something like that. You're confused.
So even just the fact of an announcement being put out there automatically sets insane expectations, because you have a game like Skyrim that comes out and it's like incredible for what it did at the time. But then you announce Elder Scrolls 6 and then you leave it for 10 years. And so they're like, oh, they've been working on it for 10 years. Like, it's going to be the best thing since sliced bread. And everything needs to be bigger and bigger and bigger. But the thing is like, you have these games that are exponentially more expensive as well. You have assets. I think there's not a linear correlation of how cheap things are to make. So if you have, even though games look higher fidelity, they take exponentially longer to make for the same quality. You'll notice that like indie developers or even like student developers can make really cool games using Unreal Engine with like super, super basic assets, like really, really, really quick. But to get that level of fidelity and, importantly, performance, you have 50% of the work to get 80% of the work done and the other 50% to get the last 20%. And with these really, really long timelines, I personally think that we're kind of at a point where people are realizing things aren't as sustainable as they're not sustainable this way. And so what we're seeing,
there's definitely been a sense of like that. I think we're all coming to that realization of bigger isn't necessarily going to mean better. It just means literally just bigger.
Yeah, and everything has to be open world these days, right?
Yeah.
So
there is definitely the sense. I mean, we've even said it before. Like, there needs to be a step back where like not everything has to be this massive, like 100-hour open world project. Like, you can take like a 2 to 3 year span and just slap together a like 4 to 5 hour game that just really nails what it wants to do.
Yeah.
Like the Guilty Gear devs, not like this year, just put out this like 60-minute visual novel that's
exactly.
like specifically designed for like older women.
Capcom's doing the
like
same thing.
they decided like let's just do something like on the side that's fun, like and something
Yeah.
that we want to do for a specific option. Whereas there are certain companies, generally ones that are more beholden to shareholders than anything else, where they're like, we have to make something that's gonna hit like 10 million plus, has to be like the biggest thing. It has to be a hype machine, has to be all this. Like, there's so much that has to be checked now. Whereas, like, especially in the indie scene, like, they're just going, I want to do this random thing. Like, some guy went, I want to make a game that's literally just a roguelite about poker. And here we are, and Balatro exists in the world. So, like, the framework that people are working with in different areas of the industry is kind of causing, like, I mean, it's worked for me. Like, my shift of focus is no longer generally on what's AAA. It's now, like, what's the AA scene doing? What's indie doing? Because there's way more interesting ideas, and it seems like they're not beholden to, we have to suddenly make this, like, grand masterpiece that everyone's expecting us to.
And I think that's where things are going. I think that you pretty much nailed it. I think we're going to see a resurgence in a big way of indie and AA. And I think passion is making a big comeback in games, where people have seen what can happen when, and this is like by no means the dev's fault. It's like, you know, I think people do the best they can with what they have to. And you're going to see a lot of the games that are doing the best right now are the passion projects. I think Peak's a great example where it has that. So Peak came out. There's a ton of social games like that have been doing really well for themselves. What's really important to note about those types of games is that you have a game that is made by a passionate group of developers. The most importantly, they know their scope. So they know what they're making. They don't need to feel. They don't feel the need to expand it for no reason and try to like meet a certain set of criteria. And the one thing I love, I haven't played Peak, but the one thing I loved that I heard about them recently is that they had some players complaining about, where's the live service DLC stuff, or like where's the DLC? Where's the DLC? And then they came back and they're like, this is the game. And I think a lot of people respected them a lot for it, where it's just an acknowledgement of like people who know what they're making in those studios are going to do really well. And I think it realigns player expectations without the baggage that comes with a lot of the things we're seeing from some of the largest games coming out these days.
Yeah, I think there is definitely going to be a focus, and then like the rest of this decade, we're going to start seeing a lot more games that are like, this is what we're making. It's for this group of people. If you are not this group of people, if you want to try it, go ahead. But like, this is who it's for. We're not making this for everyone. We're making this for people who enjoy X.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like the same along the same lines as like, follow me with this analogy, but like the music industry, right? Like, you still have your Taylor Swifts, you still have your big, massive artists, but a lot of artists now are making music for smaller niche things, and this is from Spotify has done this, is that you can find this niche subgenre of music, and there's bands who are making it. They're not going to be huge, and they're cool with that, and they're making it for that small audience who's loyal.
Well, and
and
it's also the
committed.
thing too, like there's so much experimentation happening again now. Like the metal scene alone is having such an interesting resurgence of like acts like Electric Callboy and Sleep Token, who are taking what is like basic, what we consider to be modern metal, but they're adding flares to it. Like they're adding either electronica to it or some R&B or gospel focuses to it, and it's giving a sound that's different from just the usual, like when you think of like with Metallica or Slayer or even, you know, like more like death metal bands, where it's just you're used to hearing the same kind of sounds, where now you're hearing something that's a little bit different. Whereas like, you know, we just talked with Neon Inferno, the game that I just finished, where it's like, hey, it's a lot like Contra, but also here's some different stuff in it that we haven't seen before. And I think a lot of developers, like we said earlier, are going, you know what, I really loved this idea. What if we just added a few extra cool things to it and see how that looks, instead of going, okay, Fortnite's really popular, let's try to do our own version of that.
What I really liked that my studio did actually was, so our early access came out, and it came out to, I would say, mixed reviews for it. Mm-hmm. And I think what I'm really happy that we were able to do is that our first map actually was Power Plant, and it's a large, basically open world map. And I think that came out, and what we've been really good at doing, in my opinion, obviously, is a lot of people had so many different opinions on it, and there's a lot of community chatter about like what we were missing and stuff. So I also have a lot of respect for studios who may not hit certain expectations for people, but also being flexible in terms of like realigning. It's actually been an interesting challenge too, because you have, this is what the game was when it came out, this is what players were expecting, and then you have people that onboarded with the current like game that came out, and then there's been a big transition from more open world to linear with branching paths, I would say, for some of our more recent stuff, which I'm really liking.
Yeah, we've seen how some games have transformed. Like, I mean, look at No Man's Sky, of just how things have shifted over so much time, because it launched in, it wasn't a bad state, but it was certainly not what people were expecting. And like, people are talking about it still to this day. Like it's almost unrecognizable now because of how it shifted based on like, okay, well, we tried this, that didn't work. Okay, let's try something different. Let's take some of that feedback. Let's try to put another spin on it. And that's the kind of thing that like I think a lot of people would like to see with more devs, instead of just double and tripling down on the same mistakes. Because like, again, we like everybody's been making the joke with I almost am forgetting the name, but High Guard, because we already learned the lesson with Concord. Is like, you can't just do, you know, what's popular and make it work, and then another company tried to do something similar, and it's that same lesson of like, at some point, guys, like, I know that there's obviously a financial incentive to a lot of things. Like, you obviously don't want to make a game and then the company's out of business. Obviously, no one wants that. Everybody wants to be able to still have their job by the time everything's done. But like, there's got to be a sense of, you have to be open to the idea of, look, we think on like in the board, like in the planning room, like we think that what we've got on paper here is going to work. But also, we need to have some readiness for flexibility, that if it doesn't go the way that we expect it to in terms of how it's received, to then immediately go, okay, so this is working, this is not, we need to do something with that. And I think that's the kind of stuff that whenever devs do comment and be like, hey, so here's what we've gotten back from you guys, here's what we're kind of going with it, and we'll bring out a new update for you guys soon. You guys tell us, you know, how that's working. And if that's what, you know, No More in Hell 2 is working on, because I do remember obviously that, you know, the mixed reviews on Steam when it first launched, it's like, to hear the idea that, you know, hey, like, we've seen what stuff has worked, what stuff isn't, we're going to try to find like a different balance on things. That's I think it's what most people are just kind of expecting. They're just, they want people to listen to them. They don't want them to literally take every idea that we ever give them, because obviously not every idea a fan's got is going to work, or it's not even going to come from a place of, it's not coming from someone who I think is that core audience you're looking for. But there's a point of like, okay, enough people are saying the same things that it's like, maybe this is something we need to keep in mind.
And I really like that, and also in the sense too that that's something that gamers in general, or just gamers of the game that the developers are working on too. There's an angle of that too that isn't really seen that easily. Like, there's what the community wants, and our community manager is doing a fantastic job of bringing in things.
Community managers, you want to talk about underrated, the amount of work that those guys do. I feel so bad for them sometimes.
Oh my goodness, yeah. And so our community manager's been awesome, and our direction has had some bumpy spots, because you have player has to have some expectation of what the game is versus what the game could be turning into, and like where that direction realignment's coming in. Yeah. But I also think there's also I think our keyword is flexibility, right? So you have the flexibility from to change the thing. You have your community sentiment coming in, but there's also the piece that I think we're missing is the development flexibility in two ways. One is a studio is not like one person. It can be in some ways, but I think people don't know that there's like a lot of opinions even just inside a studio in terms of like what direction should go to. There's production, there's considerations for resources. There's so many. When gamers sometimes get mad, it's like, why didn't you do this like right away? It's like, we have these resources here. This is our pool of resources. And
it's not just as simple as, okay, hey, this, like, fix this, and you go, okay, in 2 days, like, here it is. Like, there's so many channels, depending on how large the company is, too, that it has to go through. Mm-hmm. There's a great video that, I don't know if you've ever heard of Yahtzee, Ben Croshaw, who does, like, the zero punctuation stuff. He did a whole thing of just, like, talking about, like, what actually goes into something as simple as just putting a bag of chips, like having an NPC that's eating a bag of chips, and what that actually means in terms of animation, getting, if it's going to be a branded bag of chips, like going through all of that process, the sound of it, and having like all the different meetings you have to set up to get that one thing in. And now think about that for 1,000 NPCs, like what that actually means in the long term. I think that's the other thing too with games being as big as they are. I think on the flip side, I mean, obviously we talk about what devs should be doing. Gamers also need to take a step back and go, guys, we're talking about games that are as photorealistic as they are now, that are as sound realistic as they are now, and are like these 40-plus hour epics with these massive worlds. This isn't a 2-year project like games used to be. This isn't like when, in the old like PlayStation 1 or 2 days where like a company could release a game and then a year later there's another.
Yeah, my favorite bit of feedback to get, I'll say this tongue-in-cheek, is just make more maps. I think is that
Sure.
Maps take...
They're like, no, that's what you modders are for. You guys handled that pretty well in the Steam Workshop. What do you need us for?
A single map takes...
Let me write this down.
several teams and multiple months to make, right? And it's so funny when you hear that stuff. And I think if anyone is going to take away things like that, I think there's an incongruence of people's assumptions that devs are lazy or bad at making decisions and stuff. But I think the piece that I think a lot of people forget about is that it's a collaborative effort, I think, and so you have to really accommodate everyone's thoughts and timelines and production schedules and estimates for how long work takes. I think I really like the eating chips example. And ultimately, devs want to make an awesome thing just as much as the players want it. And it's like, how do we do that together? Not everyone's going to get what they want, but how can we do it in a way that marries those two thoughts together as well as we can? And sometimes people do it better. Sometimes people fall short, but I do want to say, like, for those of you who are wondering what's going on behind the curtains, devs do have people's best interest in mind, and how they go about that can change for sure. But yeah,
and it's such a complicated thing depending on, again, how big the company is. We also got to remember too that, like, especially of people of my vintage and Kaylan's vintage, like us being in either close or at our 40s almost.
Whoa, throwing that out there.
We have to remember that, like, the size of teams for the games that we grew up with as kids are not even remotely close to the same size of what the average game company is now. There's so much more than just like a group of 20 people collectively coming up with something that's like an epic on the Super Nintendo compared to a team that, like, I don't even know how many are on your team there, Mark, but like so many teams are like thousands now, where it's just there's so much more into it. And that's not even counting like people in the studio that you're at. Like, a lot of studios will work with, here's this group out of Austin, here's this group out of Malaysia. Like, there's so much more to that. So you're working with time zones, locations, and just so many different teams. Like, there's going to come a point where just not everyone's available for a Teams meeting at 6 o'clock p.m. Pacific time, guys.
It's so true.
Cool. Adam, Mark, is there anything we want to talk to them about that we haven't gotten to, or I feel like that's a good spot to stop unless you guys got something else you want to talk about. Adam, you want to go to?
I mean, this seems like something that we need to revisit another day. Like we can kick anytime that we want to kick Chris off for a week. We can just kind of bring Mark back and be like, all right. So to continue back, how else is everybody wrong about this?
What are you doing this time next week, Mark?
Let me tell you.
Is there something we've left on the table you want to bring up, Mark?
I did not have any specific things in mind. I was so open to just kind of being flexible with the conversation, and I honestly wasn't expecting it to go in half the directions it did, and I'm so glad that it did.
Welcome to the podcast, buddy.
I thought you said you listened to the show. You should know better by now.
I did. I wasn't expecting it to go in whatever directions we went into specifically, but it was really fun. And yeah, like I said, I've been listening for a while now, and big fan of you guys for sure, and I really appreciate you having me on. Yeah,
stop it.
Well, at least we got one, guys. We got one.
Mark, if people want to hear more, see more of you, where is there somewhere they can find you?
Yeah, so probably the best place to find me is Twitch. So I do it just as a casual hobby on my own time. You could also try out the games that I've been working on. So I worked on Chivalry 2, and I also am currently working on No More Room in Hell 2. Our 1.0.
Making me want to go back into Chivalry. I miss that game.
Give it a go. It's so much fun. Listen out for the
I played so
voices.
much of the OG. I'm trying to remember. Did I even play anything of 2? I don't remember now. I might have to take a look at that.
I think it's pretty cheap in some places now, so it shouldn't be too hard to pick up.
Well, yeah, because I think how old is it now? Because it's been a few years, hasn't it?
22 or 23, I think it came out. So
feels older than that, but then again, time is so weird. It's short and long at the same time.
Hold on, I lost my train of thought.
Where can they find you?
Yeah, so if you want to check out No More Hell 2, our 1.0 is launching first half of the year, as said formally, so I can say that. And then if you want to find me just personally, you can check out my Twitch at Lord Mark Mark. That's just at Lord Mark Mark on Twitch. I usually stream varies, but I try to stream Tuesdays and Fridays in the evenings, Eastern time. And it's great to be here.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us. We really enjoyed having you here.
Happy to have you. Anytime.
Thanks for letting us come to your.
Yeah, no worries.
I mean, honestly, he ran most of the conversation. He really did have us on this one.
Really,
So.
it's been great.
It's almost like he has like expertise in the industry, so it kind of makes more sense to let him go.
It's amazing when you bring a professional on. It's amazing when you bring a professional on how much it changes.
You guys just underestimated how much I like to talk, so it's been great.
Well, I think Kaylan underestimated that when he started doing the show with me too. So.
But yeah, thanks so much, everyone. If you are still here, we really appreciate you. If you could hit that like, subscribe, add comments, feed the AI hype machine to kind of get us moving up. We really appreciate it. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts, searching for PixelPlay Podcast. We also do video on Spotify and YouTube. If you want to see these lovely faces as we make content, you can do it there. You can also find us on our Discord. You can find all our socials at linktr.ee/PixelPlay Podcast. And with that, we will see you guys next week. Bye for now.